Good afternoon, friends. First of all, myself Sumit Garg, welcome to each one of you, to all my viewers for watching this YouTube channel regularly. And today's topic is Ind AS 102 share-based payment. First of all, I would like to welcome Chandni Gupta. Chandni ji, welcome to you for
So much.
accepting our invitation to be present over here. तो फ्रेंड्स, आज इंड AS 103 पर बात करने से पहले 102 शेयर बेस्ड पेमेंट पर बात करने से पहले मैं कुछ मिनट लेना चाहूंगा एप्लीकेबिलिटी ऑफ अकाउंटिंग स्टैंडर्ड इंड AS के बारे में। सबसे पहले हम बात करते हैं कि जब फाइनेंशियल स्टेटमेंट प्रिपेयर एंड प्रेजेंट करते हैं तो हु इज रिस्पॉन्सिबल फॉर प्रिपरेशन एंड प्रेजेंटेशन ऑफ द फाइनेंशियल स्टेटमेंट। सभी जानते हैं मैनेजमेंट। तो मैनेजमेंट जब अकाउंटिंग स्टैंडर्ड फॉलो करता है तो विच सेट ऑफ अकाउंटिंग स्टैंडर्ड इज एप्लीकेबल ऑन विच एंटिटीज, इट इज नीड टू बी अंडरस्टैंड। लेट मी टेल यू कि फर्स्ट अकाउंटिंग स्टैंडर्ड की बात आती है, देयर आफ्टर हम बात करते हैं शेड्यूल प्रेजेंटेशन की। विच शेड्यूल इज एप्लीकेबल? as we all know, MCA notified schedule 3 which is applicable from 2014। शेड्यूल 3 की जब हम बात करते हैं तो शेड्यूल 3 प्रेजेंटेशन की बात करता है विच इज नोटिफाइड 26 मार्च 2014। डिवीजन 1 शेड्यूल 3 में 3 प्रकार के हैं, हम बात कर लेते हैं पहले शेड्यूल डिवीजन 1 की। डिवीजन 1 इज एप्लीकेबल फॉर कंपनीज प्रिपेयरिंग फाइनेंशियल स्टेटमेंट एज पर इंड AS अकाउंटिंग स्टैंडर्ड, ट्रेडिशनल अकाउंटिंग स्टैंडर्ड की बात कर रहे हैं। और इंड AS की हम बात करते हैं तो डिवीजन 2 जो कि 6 अप्रैल 2016 को नोटिफाइड हुआ। डिवीजन 2 ऑफ शेड्यूल 3 कंपनीज which is preparing its financial statement as per Ind AS other than NBFC। NBFC के लिए एक सेपरेटली 11 अक्टूबर 2018 को शेड्यूल 3 डिवीजन 3 प्रेस्क्राइब्ड हुआ which is applicable for NBFCs। So these are the schedule for preparation of presentation of the financial statement। हम बात करते हैं अकाउंटिंग स्टैंडर्ड की। अकाउंटिंग स्टैंडर्ड, 2 सेट्स ऑफ अकाउंटिंग स्टैंडर्ड एप्लीकेबल अवेलेबल इन द मार्केट। फर्स्ट अकाउंटिंग स्टैंडर्ड ट्रेडिशनल अकाउंटिंग स्टैंडर्ड है जिसे हम IGAAP के नाम से भी जानते हैं, इंडियन जनरली एक्सेप्टेड अकाउंटिंग प्रिंसिपल। सेकंड इंड AS की बात करते हैं विच इज नोटिफाइड अंडर सेक्शन 133 ऑफ द कंपनीज एक्ट इन 2015। तो इंड AS किस कॉर्पोरेट एंटिटीज पर एप्लीकेबल है, किस कॉर्पोरेट एंटिटीज पर इंड AS अकाउंटिंग स्टैंडर्ड एप्लीकेबल है, इसको समझना सबसे पहले जरूरी है। तो इसके लिए हम कॉर्पोरेट एंटिटीज को 2 पार्ट में डिवाइड कर सकते हैं। फर्स्ट जिस पर इंड AS एप्लीकेबल है, सेकंड जिस पर अकाउंटिंग स्टैंडर्ड एप्लीकेबल है। इंड AS एप्लीकेबल एंटिटीज की बात करते हैं तो देयर आर 2 टाइप ऑफ कंपनीज। फर्स्ट जो लिस्टेड कंपनीज है, और लिस्टेड कंपनी की जब हम बात करते हैं तो उसकी होल्डिंग और सब्सिडी कंपनी भी इंक्लूड होंगी। सेकंड नेटवर्थ 250 करोड़ से अबव, अगर 250 करोड़ से अबव नेटवर्थ है किसी कंपनी की तो उस पर भी इंड AS एप्लीकेबल है विच इज एप्लीकेबल इन द फेज वाइज मैनर आफ्टर 2015। तो इस कॉर्पोरेट एंटिटीज पर इंड AS एप्लीकेबल है। तो अदर एंटिटीज जो बची अपार्ट फ्रॉम दिस लिस्टेड कंपनीज, अपार्ट फ्रॉम दिस नेटवर्थ 250 करोड़ एंड अबव वाली एंटिटीज, इसके अलावा जो कंपनी बची उस पर एप्लीकेबल है IGAAP अकाउंटिंग स्टैंडर्ड जो हमारे पहले हुआ करते थे। अकाउंटिंग स्टैंडर्ड हमारी अगर हम बात करते हैं तो अकाउंटिंग स्टैंडर्ड की जब एप्लीकेबिलिटी की बात कॉर्पोरेट एंटिटीज पर आती है तो कॉर्पोरेट एंटिटीज को फर्दर हम SMC और नॉन SMC में क्लासिफाइड करते हैं। SMC मींस स्मॉल एंड मीडियम कॉर्पोरेट एंटिटीज, नॉन SMC अपार्ट फ्रॉम स्मॉल एंड मीडियम। हमने क्यों 2 पार्ट में डिवाइड किया अदर एंटिटीज को, कॉर्पोरेट एंटिटीज को? क्योंकि अकाउंटिंग स्टैंडर्ड एप्लीकेबिलिटी की जहाँ क्वेश्चन आता है तो अगर स्मॉल एंड मीडियम कंपनीज हैं तो वहां पर सारे अकाउंटिंग स्टैंडर्ड एप्लीकेबल नहीं होंगे। लेकिन अगर हम जब बात करते हैं अदर देन SMC नॉन SMC कंपनीज की, तो नॉन SMC कंपनीज पर सारे अकाउंटिंग स्टैंडर्ड एप्लीकेबल होंगे। इसी तरह नॉन कॉर्पोरेट एंटिटीज की बात करते हैं। अभी तक मैंने बात करी कॉर्पोरेट एंटिटीज की। नॉन कॉर्पोरेट एंटिटीज कौन सी हुई? जिसमें HUF फर्म, पार्टनरशिप फर्म, LLP, ट्रस्ट, इस तरह जो भी अदर देन कॉर्पोरेट एंटिटीज हैं वो कवर्ड होती है नॉन कॉर्पोरेट एंटिटीज में। नॉन कॉर्पोरेट एंटिटीज को भी 3 पार्ट में डिवाइड किया गया, लेवल 1, लेवल 2, लेवल 3। सेट किस पर कौन से एप्लीकेबल है। लेवल 1 एंटिटीज की मैं बात करता हूँ, लेवल 1 एंटिटीज जो बड़ी कंपनी है उनकी बात, बड़ी फर्म्स हैं, नॉन कॉर्पोरेट एंटिटीज हैं, उन पर सारे अकाउंटिंग स्टैंडर्ड एप्लीकेबल होंगे, जिसमें फॉर एग्जांपल टर्नओवर 50 करोड़ से ऊपर है या बोरिंग 10 करोड़ से ऊपर है, जो कि एनबीएफसी और बैंकिंग, एनबीएफसी और इंश्योरेंस कंपनी भी है। तो इन सभी पर अकाउंटिंग स्टैंडर्ड सारे एप्लीकेबल होंगे। और इसी वाइज फेज लेवल 2 और लेवल 3 कंपनी, जिस पर कुछ कम अकाउंटिंग स्टैंडर्ड एप्लीकेबल होंगे। ये हमने बात करी अकाउंटिंग स्टैंडर्ड एप्लीकेबिलिटी की। दोस्तों आपको बता दूं कि 2003 के बाद से कोई भी अकाउंटिंग स्टैंडर्ड नया नोटिफाइड नहीं हुआ है। लास्ट अकाउंटिंग स्टैंडर्ड AS 29 नोटिफाइड इन द ईयर ऑफ 2003। देयर आफ्टर फाइनेंशियल इंस्ट्रूमेंट के जो अकाउंटिंग स्टैंडर्ड थे 30, 31, 32, जो कभी आज तक नोटिफाइड नहीं हुए। ड्राफ्ट एक्सपोजर थे जो आज तक नोटिफाइड नहीं हुए। तो लास्ट हमारा 2003 में नोटिफाइड हुआ था। और हम उसके बाद रिवीजन की बात करते हैं तो 30 मार्च 2016 को 7 अकाउंटिंग स्टैंडर्ड रिवाइज हुए। और रिवाइज जब हुए तो एक अकाउंटिंग स्टैंडर्ड डेप्रिसिएशन का AS 6 जो हुआ करता था, वो प्रॉपर्टी प्लांट एंड इक्विपमेंट में मर्ज हो गया। और जब 2003 में 29 इशू हुआ था, तब AS 8 जो रिसर्च एंड डेवलपमेंट का होता था, वो प्रोविजंस कंटिजेंट लायबिलिटीज एंड कंटिजेंट एसेट में मर्ज हो गया। तो इस तरह 29 में से 2 चले गए, 27 अकाउंटिंग स्टैंडर्ड एप्लीकेबल इन द टुडेज टाइम, जिसमें हमने अभी समझा कि अकाउंटिंग स्टैंडर्ड किस एंटिटीज पर कौन से एप्लीकेबल होते हैं। तो फ्रेंड्स, ट्रू एंड फेयर व्यू प्रेजेंट करने के लिए मैनेजमेंट सबसे पहले अकाउंटिंग स्टैंडर्ड कौन से एप्लीकेबल है ये अप्लाई करेगा। देयर आफ्टर शेड्यूल के अकॉर्डिंग, किस शेड्यूल के अकॉर्डिंग हमें बैलेंस शीट प्रिपेयर करनी है, फाइनेंशियल स्टेटमेंट प्रिपेयर करनी है, क्या चीज का डिस्क्लोजर देना है, इस चीज को कंप्लाई करेगा। देयर आफ्टर ड्यूटी आती है ऑडिटर्स की, जो कि स्टैंडर्ड ऑफ ऑडिटिंग के अकॉर्डिंग उस चीज को वेरीफाई करेगा। तो दोस्तों सबसे पहले ये समझना जरूरी है कि किस अकाउंटिंग स्टैंडर्ड AS और IND-AS कौन कौन से किस एंटिटीज पर एप्लीकेबल है, जो मैंने अभी डिस्कस किया। अब IND-AS की बात करते हैं। IND-AS के बारे में डिटेल में अभी, जो कि आज का IND-AS है 102 शेयर बेस्ड पेमेंट। अपार्ट फ्रॉम दिस हमने कई सारे AS ऑलरेडी कवर किए हुए हैं। जो 39 AS IND-AS एप्लीकेबल है। IND-AS इज कन्वर्ज फॉर्म ऑफ IFRS, जहां पर बहुत सारे कर्व आउट्स हैं। IFRS से कन्वर्जन हुआ इंडिया में, तो बहुत सारी जो इंडियन सिनेरियो को चेंज देखते हुए जो चेंजेस थे वो रिक्वायर्ड किए गए, वो सजेस्ट किए गए, उन्हें हम कर्व आउट्स के नाम से जानते हैं। और इस तरह IND-AS कुछ सर्टेन एंटिटी पर एप्लीकेबल है। तो हमने धीरे धीरे इस चीज को आगे बढ़ाया, और आज हम इस नए एक IND-AS को 102 पर डिस्कस करने के लिए आज हमारे साथ हैं मैडम चांदनी गुप्ता जी। चांदनी जी, फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल वेलकम टू यू। एंड चांदनी जी के बारे में दोस्तों कि शी इज रैंक होल्डर, टॉप रैंक होल्डर इन BPCC एज वेल एज फाइनल, एंड शी इज वर्किंग एक्सक्लूसिवली इन द फील्ड ऑफ IND-AS फाइनेंशियल रिपोर्टिंग, जहाँ पर बात करते हैं। और लेटेस्ट इन्होंने जब लास्ट 1 ईयर बिफोर शी इज रैंक होल्डर क्वालिफाई किया है, तो शी इज हैविंग वास्ट एक्सपीरियंस इन द फील्ड ऑफ फाइनेंशियल रिपोर्टिंग। सो चांदनी जी, आपके व्यूज के लिए हम आज डिस्कस करने वाले हैं। तो साथ में जो भी क्वेरी होंगी मेंबर्स की, वो लास्ट में हम उसे कंसीडर करेंगे। तो इसके साथ आज का टॉपिक को स्टार्ट करते हैं। विद दिस बैकग्राउंड, ओवर टू यू चांदनी जी।
Thank you so much, Sumit sir. Thank you so much for giving me this platform, and it is wonderful to connect with you once again. So, guys, today we are going to learn about IND-AS 102, which is share-based payments. So, first of all, I would like to tell you what is share-based payment. तो हम लोगों ने सबने ESOPs के बारे में सुना है. What are ESOPs? ESOPs are Employee Stock Option Plan or Employee Stock Option Scheme. Right? इसमें क्या होता है? The company gives an option to its employees to subscribe to its shares. और जो ये ऑप्शन दिया जाता है एम्प्लॉइज को, ये दिया जाता है एक लोअर प्राइस पे, मार्केट प्राइस से एक लोअर प्राइस पे, बिकॉज इन दैट केस ओनली द ESOPs will be beneficial for employees and employees will subscribe to the shares of the company. Now, अभी तक, before introducing IND-AS, how the accounting was done for these ESOPs. ICAI has issued a guidance note on accounting for share-based payments. And using that guidance note, the accounting was done for ESOPs. But the catch is that guidance note provided accounting only for share-based payments, which was in relation to employees. But today, we are going to study Ind AS 102, which will talk about share-based payments in relation to employees and also non-employees. So yes, it covers a very vast scope. This Ind AS is basically converged from IFRS 2. IFRS are what? These are international financial reporting standards. As Sumit sir just explained about the applicability of AS and Ind AS. Some companies are applying AS on their financial statements, and some companies are required to apply Ind AS. So those who are applying accounting standards will apply that guidance note issued by ICAI, and those who are applying Ind AS will use this Ind AS 102 for share-based payments. So first of all, let's understand, why do companies go for share-based payments? As the name suggests, this is a payment which is based on shares. So it includes giving shares in consideration of goods or services, and also paying some cash, the value of which is dependent upon shares. So ultimately, in both the cases, the payment, the amount will be based on shares. Now, why do companies go for this? So there are two aspects of it. First aspect is, when we see from the point of view of startups. So generally, in the introduction phase of startups, they do not have much of cash flows, right? So in order to avoid any cash crunch, they go for share-based payments. They issue share-based payments to their employees, to their key vendors, so that they are able to maintain the relationship, as well as they are able to get the services and goods. And the second aspect is from the point of view of established companies. So you must have heard about ESOPs, big companies issuing ESOPs. So generally, the senior management of most of companies, they have ESOPs as part of their compensation only, right? So not like only startups go for this kind of payment, but also the established companies go for this kind of payment. The general idea behind this is that it gives a sense of ownership, a sense of responsibility in the employees and vendors. So recently, during this lockdown, the startups like Oyo, Zomato, all of these startups have laid off their employees. They have, salary cuts have been done. So in lieu of, to compensate for such layoffs and such salary cuts, these companies have issued ESOPs to their employees. So it is a kind of consideration for the services. So when we talk about non-employees, the company obtains some goods or services. And when we talk about employees, the services are what? Employment services. So as you can see on your screen, the company has obtained goods and services from a supplier, which will be a non-employee vendor, and from employee, the company has obtained employment services. And in consideration for these services and goods, the company is giving cash, which will be based on the equity shares or the equity instruments. So this is the kind of arrangement we are going to talk about. The goods that company might obtain includes inventories, consumables, PPE, and other non-financial items. And the equity instruments do not only include the equity shares, but also includes the options, obviously the ordinary equity shares, redeemable preference shares, written call options, or warrants on ordinary shares. So when we talk about this arrangement, what is this arrangement? What is there any agreement or what? So yes, there has to be an agreement There has to be a mutual understanding of the terms and conditions between the company and the supplier. So when we talk of whenever I say supplier, it includes the vendor, which is a non-employee, and employee also, right? So for the purpose of this standard, supplier means vendor and employee. So the date on which the company and the supplier agrees to the terms and conditions of this arrangement is known as the grant date. And this date is very useful for the accounting of these share-based payments. We will understand this in later slides. I hope this part is clear to everyone. Now, we understand what is the standard going to talk about, but what this standard does not cover. So suppose there may be cases that employee already holds some shares of the companies, and now company has introduced right issue. What is right issue? In case of right issue, the company gives a right to its existing shareholders to subscribe to additional equity shares. Right? So in that case, if the employee is already holding some shares of the company, the employee will getting additional shares. So will that issuance of shares be covered in the standard? I request everyone who are online to answer to my questions. I cannot see anyone's answer, but I would request you all to be interactive. Okay, so this issuance of shares to employees in their capacity as shareholders will not be covered in this standard. This standard covers only those arrangements in which the employee is in the capacity of a service provider and not the shareholders, right? So this transaction is out of the purview of this standard. Second part is when the company acquires goods as a part of net assets in a business combination as per Ind AS 103, or as contribution to joint ventures as per Ind AS 111. So this arrangement is also out of the purview of this standard, because you have to keep in mind that whenever we are talking about this standard, whenever we are talking about share-based payment as per Ind AS 102, we are always talking about goods and services that the company obtains from third parties, or the employment services that the company obtains from its employees in their capacity as service. Third aspect is financial instruments issued to buy or sell non-financial instruments which can be settled at net. So this is also out of the purview of this standard. What is this? I'll just give you a quick example. So suppose a company has entered into a contract to buy some say gold after 2 months, and the company, as per the contract, the company will issue its own equity shares to the vendor. But the contract says that after 2 months, whatever be the value of gold and whatever be the value of its equity shares will be settled at net. So there is no need for actual delivery of the gold, right? So these kind of arrangements, the arrangements in which equity shares are issued in exchange for some non-financial items and which will be settled in net, these arrangements are also out of the purview of this standard. I hope it's clear to everyone. Now, when I said this arrangement includes an arrangement to issue equity shares, and number 2, of giving some cash, the value of which is dependent upon the equity shares of the company. So when the company issues its own equity shares, it is known as the equity settled share-based transaction. And when the company pays cash, the value of which is dependent upon the equity shares, it is known as the cash settled share-based payment transactions. So first of all, we will understand the equity settled transactions in which the company is supposed to issue the equity shares of it. Right. So in this slide, you can see a company has a company has bought trucks from the logistic company. So FMCG company needs trucks for its logistics purposes, and it has bought some trucks from the logistics company. And in consideration of the trucks, the company is going to issue its own equity shares to the logistics company. So this is the arrangement. Now, how the accounting will flow? Let's understand. First of all, when the recognition will be done, the recognition will be done, the truck recognized in books uh, I guess there was some
I think
network issue.
Chalni, some disconnect हो गया है. So,
Yeah. Is it good now?
yes, yes.
Okay. Sorry.
आपके इंटरनेट में तो कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है ना?
I think थोड़ा सा वो फ्लक्चुएट कर गया था. It's okay. अब मैंने हॉटस्पॉट से कनेक्ट कर लिया.
ठीक है.
Yes. So we were on the recognition of equity. Yeah. So equity will be recognized by creating a share-based payment reserve, which is a component of equity. Now, what will be the value of truck and what will be the value of equity? The value on which these components will be recognized is the fair value of trucks when they are received. Right. So when we talk about equity settled transactions with other than employees, that means we are getting some goods and services, and there is always a market for those goods and services. Right. There will be certain sellers and certain buyers, and accordingly, the demand and supply transactions will give you a fair value of that product. So there is a rebuttable presumption that fair value can always be measured reliably for such goods and services. But just in case the fair value of such goods or services cannot be measured reliably, the standard says the company can use the fair value of equity instruments which will be measured on grant date. Now, when I say the fair value will be measured on the grant date, it will be measured using some different option pricing models. Right? Grant date is the date on which the parties have agreed to the terms and conditions of the contract. Right? But this fair value, which is computed as on grant date, is different from other fair values as per other indices. This fair value is computed using various option pricing models like Black and Scholes model, binomial method, and this fair value will consider the exercise price of the option, because obviously the company will issue equity shares at an exercise price, which will generally be lower than the market price. It will consider the current market price of the shares, expected market price of the shares, the dividend yield, etc. So this fair value computation is very different from the fair value that we study as per Ind AS 113 or Ind AS 109. Right. So this is how the accounting for equity settled transactions with other than employees will go. Now, what about the equity settled transactions with employees? So the employee is giving employment services to the company, and company is issuing equity shares, but there could be some vesting conditions attached. Now, what are vesting conditions? Vesting conditions are certain conditions imposed by the company, which, if fulfilled by the other party, the supplier, will enable the supplier to be eligible for equity shares or the share-based payments. So say in this transaction, FMCG company has issued equity shares to employees, has given an option to equity shares to employees, provided that that employee serve the company for at least 4 years from the grant date. Right, so this is a vesting condition. The employee is required to provide services to the company for at least 4 years from the grant date, and only then after the 4 years the employee will be eligible for the equity shares. So this is the vesting condition, and these service period of 4 years will be considered as vesting period, right? And since the equity shares are issued in exchange for some vesting condition of 4 years, we can say that these equity shares are in exchange for employment services over the period of 4 years. Now, how the accounting will go? Since employment services are very personal in nature and you cannot really measure the fair value of employment services. So in that case, the standard says the recognition will be on the fair value of equity shares that will be measured at the grant date. So this is the use of grant date in this standard. The fair value of equity instruments are always measured as on the grant date. Now for employment services, the employment cost will be recognized in P&L as a part of employee benefit cost, right? And each service year, the employment cost will be recognized, and correspondingly, the equity will be recognized in share-based payment reserve. And what will be the value? The value will be the fair value of equity instruments measured as on the grant date. Right now, it may so happen that when the company came up with such an arrangement, there were 100 employees and the company gave this option to all the 100 employees. And since the condition attached over here is the service period of 4 years, now it may so happen that after 1 year or 2 years, some employees leave the company, right? In that case, the shares do not vest. Accordingly, at each reporting date until the vesting is completed, the company will estimate the number of equity shares that will ultimately vest. So this adjustment will go on at each reporting date, so that whatever the expense that has already been recognized can be adjusted, and ultimately after 4 years, the total cost that have been recognized and total balance in the equity will be equal to the fair value of equity instrument multiplied by the number of equity shares that actually vest. Right? So over the period of vesting, the adjustment in expense and equity will be done each reporting date. And since the fair value is recognized and measured as on the grant date, so over the period of vesting, the fair value will not change. The fair value per share will remain as it is as on the grant date, and every year only the number of equity shares will change. The fair value will remain as same as the grant date. So this was all about the equity settled transaction with employees. Now let's understand the cash settled transactions. Now again, these cash settled transactions can be with employees or other than employees. So first of all, what happens when it's with non-employees? So in this case, you can see the same transaction as equity settled. Just in place of equity shares, the company will give cash to the company, and the amount of cash will be based on the value of equity shares of the company. And in case of cash settled transactions, instead of recognizing equity in the share-based payment reserve, the company is required to recognize a liability. And since we are recognizing a liability, the fair value of liability as on the grant date is computed, and the asset, the trucks in this case, and the liability will be measured using the fair value of liability as on the grant date. Now, it may so happen that the goods are not delivered, or there are services which are provided over a period of time, like professional services or maintenance services. So there is a contract for 2 months for maintenance services, but the services will be recognized only when they are received. So in that case, the fair value of liability will be computed on the date when the services are received, and accordingly the services, the cost and the liability will be recognized using fair value as on that date and not on the grant date. I hope it's clear. And now, since we are recognizing a liability and not the equity, so until unless the liability is ultimately settled, जब तक कि पेमेंट नहीं हो जाता लाइबिलिटी का एक्चुअल, तब तक वी विल remeasure the liability using the fair value as on the reporting date, just like any other fair value remeasure, right? As on the reporting date, the fair value of liability will be remeasured, and whatever the adjustment is need to be done, the impact will be recognized in P&L. I hope it's clear to everyone. Now, when we talk about cash settled transaction with employees, again, the employee cost will be recognized. Instead of equity, a liability will be recognized. And the liability will be the fair value of liability at each reporting date. Because in case of employment services, nothing happens on the grant date, right? The services are delivered by the end of reporting date only. So in that case, the fair value of liability will be measured by the end of the reporting date, and that will be used to measure employee cost and for recognizing the liability against that. And in case of cash settled transaction, so in case of equity settled transaction, we used to adjust the number of equity shares, but the fair value used to remain same as the grant date. But in case of cash settled transaction, the number of equity shares will also be adjusted, and the fair value will also be remeasured, right? So this is very simple. In case of equity, the fair value does not change, but in case of cash settled, the fair value keeps on changing as on the reporting date. Now, we have understood when the company enters into an arrangement of share-based payment transactions, where the company agrees to issue equity shares or pay cash, with the value of which is dependent upon the equity shares. But there are also some arrangements in which either of the parties have an option to select either to go for equity shares or to go for cash, which is based upon the equity shares. So these are called the share-based payment transactions with cash alternatives. Right? In this case, either party has an option to select between the equity settled option or cash settled option. Now let's understand if this option to select between equity settled and cash settled is with the supplier. Now what happens in this case? So generally, if the right to select between these options is with the supplier or employee, the company is not very sure about what option the employee or the supplier will go for, will finally opt, right? So company is not sure about which option will be opted by the supplier. So in that case, the entire instrument, the entire arrangement is treated as a compound instrument. How come compound instrument? Compound instrument means it is a hybrid of debt and equity. Right, so debt part is separated from the equity part. There is a value of compound instrument. In this case, we just separate the debt part and the equity part. The debt part represents the cash settled part. So in case of cash settled, what do we do? We recognize a liability instead of equity, right? So that's how the debt component is recognized. And the equity component represents the equity settled part. In this case, we recognize the equity and not the liability. The treatment will be similar to how we go for cash settled transaction and equity settled transaction separately. So once we have separated the debt component and equity component, we can easily account for both of these as per cash settled or equity settled respectively. Now in this case also, when the recognition will be done, goods or services will be recognized only when they are actually received, right? And liability for equity settled and equity for liability for cash settled and equity for equity settled will be recognized on the same day when the goods or services are received, right? So liability will be remeasured at each reporting date, but the equity will remain same, just like the normal transactions. As I just told you, how do we measure the value? If we have the value of compound instrument, we can easily compute the value of debt instrument, and the difference between these two will be the value of equity component. So when it is a case with non-employee, it's a third party vendor. In that case, the fair value of goods and services will always be readily measurable. So if we have the goods, the value of goods and services, and we can compute the fair value of debt component, then the difference between these two will be the fair value of equity component. And similarly, in case of employees, since we do not have the fair value of employment services, we will measure the fair value of compound instrument as a whole and sole, and we will measure the fair value of debt component, and the difference between these two will be the equity component. And subsequent measurement will be, as just I told you, the debt component will be accounted for as cash settled and equity component will be accounted for as equity settled. But the catch is, what happens at the settlement date? Now the supplier can either go for equity shares or it may opt cash settled, right? So what we have done till here, we have recognized cash settled part also and debt component also as per the debt component as per cash settled part and equity component as per equity settled part. But as on the settlement date, either of these two will be selected by the supplier. If the settlement is in equity shares, the supplier goes for equity shares instead of cash. Then what do we do? The liability in the cash settled will be transferred to the equity, and accordingly the equity shares will be issued. So what we are doing here is, we have recognized a debt component and equity component. Debt component as per cash settled transaction and equity component as per equity settled transaction. In case of cash settled transaction, we recognize liability. And in case of equity settled transaction, we recognize equity. But on the settlement date, the employee has opted for equity shares, but we do not have the balance in equity because we have also recognized liability. So what do we do? We transfer the liability into equity and then we can issue the equity shares. I hope it's clear to everyone. Now the second case, when the settlement is in cash. Now the supplier opts for cash payment instead of equity shares. Then what happens? The liability we have already recognized. The cash payment will be adjusted against that liability. And the equity, what happens to equity? Equity remains unchanged. It will remain in equity only. It will not be transferred to liability. What we can do is, since we have recognized equity in share-based payment reserve, we can just transfer it into the other component of equity like RE or anything. Right. So the settlement in cash will be adjusted against the liability, as simple as that. I hope it's clear to everyone. Okay, I'll just check. Okay. Now what if the right to select between these options is with the company and not the supplier? So in this case, the entire option will either be treated as equity settled or be treated as cash settled. The treatment will not be as of a compound instrument. It will be either equity settled or cash settled. Now, how do we identify whether it will be cash settled or equity settled? So if the company has a present obligation to settle in cash, so if the company has an obligation to settle in cash, then obviously we will go for cash settled, and the company will recognize a liability for that transaction. But if the company does not have a present obligation to settle in cash, in that case, the company will go for equity settled, and accordingly, the equity will be recognized instead of liability. Now, how do company measure if it has a present obligation or not? So generally, the present obligation is assumed. The company is assumed to have a present obligation when there is no commercial substance to issue equity. That means the company is not going to issue equity. There is no commercial substance, right? Or it may so happen that there are some restrictions over the issue of equity. Company cannot issue the additional equity shares only. Then in that case, it is understood that the company will pay cash only because it cannot issue equity shares, right? Or if there is a past practice of the company, that company generally settles these kind of transactions in cash, then also we can assume that okay, the company is also going to settle this transaction in cash, and so we can go for cash settle. But if there is no such present obligation, then the equity settled approach will be taken. I hope it's clear to everyone. Right. So initially, when we talked about equity settled transaction with employees, I mentioned a vesting condition. Right. In that case, the employee was required to serve the company for at least 4 years. Then only the employee will be eligible for share-based payments. Right. So there can be certain other conditions attached to such kind of an arrangement. Now, what are these conditions? Let's understand. The conditions can be of two types, either vesting conditions or non-vesting conditions. So non-vesting conditions are not generally considered. So we are going to just discuss this later. Let's focus on the vesting conditions. Vesting conditions can be of two types, performance conditions or service conditions. So the 4 year of employment services that we talked about is a part of service conditions, because it is when the company required the employee to serve for a minimum term to be eligible to share-based payments, right? So it is a service condition. The 4 years will be considered as a service period. Now, what are performance conditions, and how these conditions do impact the share-based payment transaction? So the performance conditions are generally attached to certain target or a threshold. These performance conditions can either be market related conditions or non-market related conditions. When they are market related, what generally is a target in market for a company? It's its share price, right? So in case of a market related condition, the company usually sets a target for its share price, that okay, if after 2 years the company's share price reaches say 150 rupees, then then the employees will be eligible for share based payments. If it does not reach 150 rupees in 2 years, in that case the shares will not vest, right? So when we talk about market related conditions, it generally impacts the fair value of the shares or the option. But when we talk about non-market related conditions, what are these conditions? Non-market related conditions could be the internal performance of the company, say the operations, activities, production units. Say the company has put a condition in the share-based payment transaction that if the employees are able to reach a revenue, a turnover of say 150 crores after 1 year, then only the employees will be eligible for share-based payments. So these kind of conditions are what? Non-market related performance conditions. Now, what is actually the impact of these conditions and where do we consider these conditions? So if you see this, the service condition impacts the estimated equity shares that are ultimately going to vest. Because how do we treat service conditions? As you just spoke, that say a company has issued this option to 100 employees, but after 2 years or 3 years, certain employees leave the company. Say 10 employees have already left the company. And after 4 years, after the vesting period, only 80 employees are in the system. So what will be the impact? Where will it be considered? The number of equity shares that are ultimately going to vest will be adjusted. Right. So there can be two impacts of these conditions. Either the number of equity shares that are ultimately going to vest will be adjusted, or the fair value will be adjusted. The fair value at initial recognition or subsequent recognition. So service condition is included to estimate the number of equity shares that are ultimately going to vest. Now, when we talk about performance conditions which are market related, which is the target price of equity shares of the company, it does not really impact the expected equity shares to be vested. It will be included in the fair value of the shares. And when we talk about non-market related conditions, it will again be included and impact the equity shares that are going to be vested. And non-vesting conditions are again included in fair value. These do not really impact the number of equity shares to be vested. So when I told you that fair value of options of these share-based payments is different from what other standards have told us, I said that this fair value will be computed using certain option pricing models like Black-Scholes and binomial method. And while determining these fair values, the technicians, the experts will consider the market related performance conditions and the non-vesting conditions. So these conditions impact the fair value. These are included in the fair value of the share-based payment. But the service condition and non-market related performance conditions, these are adjusted for the number of equity shares that are ultimately going to vest. I hope it's clear now. So this standard also gives the guidance on modification, cancellation, or early settlement of the equity share-based payments. Now, what happens generally, not generally, but it may so happen that a company has issued this option to its employees, and the exercise price in that case was 100 rupees, while the market price was 150 rupees. Now, the vesting period was 6 years. After 4 years, the market price of the company's share falls down to 70 rupees. Now, what is the situation here? After 4 years down the line, the market price of the company's share is 70 rupees, but the exercise price of the option is 100 rupees. Will the employees opt for this option? Will the employees subscribe to the shares of the company at 100 rupees when the market price is only 70 rupees? Can you write yes or no in the chat? Okay, I guess. Okay, so I'll tell you, employees will not opt for this, because if in the market the equity shares are available for 70 rupees, why the employees will go for? Yes, so I've got a response from Mr. Nitin. Yes, sir, absolutely correct. The employees will not opt for this because in market it is available for 70. Why will they go for 100? Right? It's not beneficial. Absolutely correct. So in that case, the company will modify the options. Now, in case the company modifies the option, how the accounting will go? The company is required to account for the original awards as it is, and due to modification, if there is any increase in the fair value. Now when the exercise price is reduced, the fair value of the option increases. There is an inverse relationship, because the fair value of the option is a cost for the company and a benefit for the employees. So when the exercise price goes down, the fair value increases, and hence the cost for the company increases. So in that case, the company will account for the original award as it is, and whatever the increase in fair value is will be recognized as an additional cost. I hope it's clear to everyone. So if the original options have not yet vested, then obviously the original award will be recognized as it is. But in case the original options are already vested, they're gone, they're already settled. In that case, whatever the increase in fair value is will be recognized as an additional, as a new option. Now, the standard also provides guidance in case the options are cancelled or they are settled during the vesting period before the expiry. Right, so generally, I'll just give an overview of this. What generally happens is when the company cancels, so say the company had issued these options to its employees, and the vesting period was again 6 years. But 3 years down the line, the company realized that okay, they cannot afford this type of cost, and they need to cancel these payments. They cannot afford the options. So now the company is going to cancel these options. Now, how the accounting will go? The company is required to recognize the expense that would have been recognized even if the options were not cancelled. So basically, the total cost will be recognized when the options are cancelled. And generally, when these are cancelled, the company pays some cash, right? Some payment is done to compensate the employees for their loss. So whatever the compensation is done will be adjusted against equity if the option was all equity, and it will be adjusted against the liability if it was a liability. It was a cash settled transaction, right? And if the company issues new equity instruments, and when the company issues new equity instruments to replace the existing ones, then the accounting will be similar to how the modification is done. And if it is not a replacement, then what happens? The accounting for new equity instrument will be done as a newly granted equity instruments. So that's how the cancellation and the settlement part goes. Now I'll just quickly give you an overview of this also, because this is one important aspect, and a lot of companies are applying this. So this is basically a group share-based payment plan. Generally, what happens is, suppose a kid buys something and his parents pay for it, right? So similarly, in corporate world, what generally happens is, if a subsidiary buys a goods or services, the parent company issues its own equity shares or gives cash to the supplier. And the reverse also happens, where the goods or services are taken by the parent company, and it is settled by the subsidiary company. So the subsidiary company is giving its own equity shares or settling it in cash. right? So what happens in this kind of a transaction, this kind of an arrangement? So generally, there are two entities now. One that is receiving the goods and services, and the other which is settling the share-based payment transaction, right? So for the company which is receiving the goods and services, it will measure it as an equity settled share-based payment when it issues its own equity instruments, or when it has no obligation to settle the share-based payment transaction. So now how do we identify if the company has obligation or not? So what happens is, say a subsidiary company has issued a share-based payment plan to its employees. But as per that plan, the equity shares that the subsidiary will issue will be of its parent company. So in that case, what has happened? The subsidiary company will issue the equity shares of its parent company, but the obligation to make the ultimate settlement is of the subsidiary company. Subsidiary company will be held liable if the settlement does not go as planned. Right. So if the subsidiary company has subsumed these obligations, in that case, subsidiary company will account it for as cash settled share-based payments. And for the entity which is going to settle the share-based payment transaction, it will measure the transaction as equity settled only when its own equity shares are issued. Otherwise, the measurement will be as per the cash settled share-based payment transaction. I hope it's clear. Now we'll just give you one example here, and we'll explain the accounting treatment in standalone financial statements and consolidated financial statements. Now suppose a subsidiary company has taken some goods or services from the supplier, and it will be settled by the parent company by issuing its own equity shares, or say by cash, the value of which is dependent upon the equity shares of the parent company. Now what will happen? Subsidiary company in its standalone financial statements will account for it as the cost will be recognized by the subsidiary company, and the equity shares that the parent company is going to issue to the supplier will be recognized in subsidiary company as capital contribution by the parent, because now it can be seen as a capital contribution, because ultimately the services are consumed by the subsidiary company, but the payment is done by the parent company. So it is kind of an investment done by the parent company in the subsidiary company. So the parent company will recognize it as an investment in subsidiary, and since it is going to issue its own equity shares, so the share-based payment reserve will be created by the parent company. This is the treatment in the standalone financial statements. In case of consolidated financial statements, what will happen? The capital contribution and the investment in subsidiary will be eliminated, because if you see this purple box, this is the group, right? Parent and subsidiary are in the group. Now, out of this purple box, there is a supplier. So what is going outside this purple box and what is coming inside the purple box from outside will only be reflected in the consolidated financial statements. So in the purple box, the investment in subsidiary and the capital contribution is an eliminating transaction. Hence, in consolidated financial statements, these two entries will be settled off, and only the employee cost and the share-based payment reserve will be reflected in the consolidated financial statements. I hope it's clear to everyone.
जी madam.
So we can take some queries, although I have some MCQs also, but if anyone has query, we can take the queries first, and then probably we can wrap it up.
Madam, you can cover the entire. कितनी देर का रह गया है?
MCQs बचे सर, मैंने MCQs प्रिपेयर किए थे थोड़े.
MCQs बचे.
हाँ.
एक क्वेरी है अमित खत्री जी की. Will Ind AS be applicable if share and gold are not settled as net?
So Ind AS will be applicable if shares and gold are not settled at net. So yes, obviously. So gold, if the company is acquiring, like buying the gold and settling in equity shares, then obviously it will be covered in this standard. But if it is going to settle in net, then the standard will not be applicable.
Okay.
Alok sir is also watching.
Chandni ji, no other query you can cover as per your FAQ so that जो भी बाद में देखें उन्हें भी beneficial हो सके.
Okay, so I'll go for MCQs. I just brought some MCQs. If all the viewers, I would request all the viewers to please pay attention and answer. Right. So in this case, we will understand a quick concept which we have already covered, but we'll just revise it. So in this MCQ, D Limited has initiated a plan to provide some stock option to its employees on 1st June. And it was finally approved by the management on 15th June. The company announced the plan to its employees on 10th July. And the employees gave their consent on 24th July. Now, I just want to understand when this agreement will be considered as a share-based payment transaction as per standard 102. 1st June, 15th June, 10th July or 24th July. What will be the date, grant date? I would request all the viewers to be active and just respond if. Okay, I've got one answer. I am waiting for others to answer. Please. Okay, so we'll go with one answer that we have received. Mr. Nitin, absolutely correct answer, sir. It's 24th July because the arrangement has been finally agreed upon 24th of July. Both the parties have to be mutually agreed to this contract. So next question, we'll just do one, two MCQs more. So in this question, what is happening is an entity has issued right shares to all its shareholders, which includes employees of the company. So will the shares be covered under Ind AS 102? A yes or a no? Alok sir, absolutely correct answer. Thank you so much. Okay, this is the last question. I just need a yes or a no. Requesting all the viewers to answer, please. Okay. Right. Absolutely correct, Nitin, Mr. Nitin. This will not be covered in the Ind AS 102. And another question we have is, if an entity has acquired a company and issued equity shares to acquirees' employees in their capacity as employees, will it be covered under Ind AS 102? So I'll just explain this one. It will be covered. The answer is yes, because if you must be wondering now that the business combination transactions are not covered, but in this case the entity is issuing its equity shares to the employees of the acquiring company in their capacity as employees, right? Since the group share based payment plan is covered under this Ind AS, it will also be covered in Ind AS 102, right? And last question, we all know this, the entity acquired a building in exchange for issue of its own equity shares. So it will also be covered in this, because since we have understood everything, that this standard covers the transactions with not only employees but also with other vendors. That is the major difference between the guidance note issued by the ICAI and the Ind AS 102. Yes. Okay, so I hope the standard was clear to everyone. And if you have any doubt, any query, you can connect with me. And yes, Sumit sir, over to you.
Thank you, Chandni ji, and you have wonderfully covered entire topic 102 share-based payment, and we have we acknowledge the presence of CA Alok Garg ji,
Yes.
and thank you, Chandni ji, for covering.
Thank you so much. Thank you so
Thank you
much.
to
And
all
thanks
viewers.
to
Thank you to all viewers for
Alok
joining
sir.
right now and later on, and thanks to you first for deliberation, wonderful deliberation.
Thank
Now,
you so much.
ending this program as there is no other query, so we can conclude this session.
Perfect. So thank you so much, sir. Thank you to the wonderful audience. And thanks to Alok sir for always motivating me by his comments. So thank you so much.
Thank you.